On today's Locked On Giants podcast, an outside the box idea for the Giants' 2025 first round draft pick, plus the potential impact of ownership's decision moving forward. That's all coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, welcome on into my Blue Crew community members, to my everydayers, to my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, folks, on today's Locked On Giants podcast, we all know that the New York Giants need to find the next franchise quarterback. But, it's been said that this year's quarterback class isn't exactly dripping with the type of talent and, sure things of last year's class. So, there's no guarantee. Plus, you look at where the Giants are drafting, there's no guarantee that the Giants are going to be able to get even one of these top quarterback prospects. So could they maybe look outside the box and take a different approach to the draft? We're going to talk about that in the first segment. Then in the second segment, the Giants, we're going to take a look at the fallout, if you will, from the Giants' decision to retain Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Now, I know, at this point, the topic is maybe a little outdated, but in thinking about it over the weekend, I couldn't help but wonder what the fallout is going to be for the Giants organization moving forward. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but we'll talk about some of the concerns I have moving forward. And then finally, in segment 3, Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, they're back, but there's one change, in my opinion, that absolutely needs to happen for this relationship to work a little bit better than maybe what it has so far. So we'll talk about that in segment 3. So again, welcome on into everybody. All right, let's talk about the draft. Now, we know where the Giants are drafting, right? They're drafting third. We know that the top 2 quarterbacks right now, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. We also know that the Cleveland Browns and the Tennessee Titans need quarterbacks as of this recording. Now, that could change, obviously, depending on what happens in free agency or if they trade for somebody, but they need a franchise quarterback. So that would potentially, you would think, leave the Giants out in the cold, all right? So where they would have to maybe go with a Travis Hunter from Colorado, which wouldn't be a bad pick, by the way. I would be totally on board with that if Sanders and Ward were off the board and the Giants had to pick, Travis Hunter, who, I think would be a cornerback for the Giants and, have a select package maybe as a wide receiver. I don't think he would play full-time receiver for the Giants, certainly not with, Malik Neighbors and, Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't think they would make him a full-time receiver because I don't know that there would be enough to go around. But anyway, here's another thought. And this is just me spitballing. This is it's so early in the process. You can't really rule anything out other than maybe I just don't see the Giants trading up in this draft to get their quarterback, because I honestly don't think that the Titans and the Browns at this stage of the game, I don't think they're going to want to trade out of a position to get one of those 2 quarterbacks. I could be wrong, but I don't see it happening. Could the Giants trade down? Absolutely, they could. Should they? You know what? I could see that making sense if they believe that, their next franchise quarterback is going to be in the 2026 draft class, and you want to stock up on draft assets so that if you have to move up next year, You can. But let me throw at you another possibility here. Something that I don't think a lot of people are discussing, but really, is something we probably should discuss for the first round for the Giants. And this is just an idea, folks. I'm not endorsing it. I'm not saying this is what they should do. I'm just putting this out there. Where were the Giants the weakest, other than quarterback, obviously, in 2024? The answer, in the trenches. All right. So if you're building a team, doesn't it make sense to build from the inside out as opposed from the outside in? Doesn't it make sense to make sure that you have a solid offensive line and a solid defensive line? Can we say that the Giants have both of those? All right, you might be able to say that the offensive line, if healthy, is solid. They don't have a whole lot of depth they would need to add, but I don't know necessarily that I would run and say, okay, they've got to add, a first round offensive tackle. I don't think that's going to be in their best interest this year. The defensive line, however, that's where I would say, if you could get a Mason Graham or one of those big stud defensive linemen to pair up with Dexter Lawrence. I mean, how many times have you heard me say on this show that Dexter Lawrence, as good as he is, cannot do it all by his lonesome? All right. You look at what the Giants have in terms of depth on the defensive line. They have some young talent. Elijah Chapman looked promising. Elijah Garcia looked promising. Rakeem Nunez-Roches, I'm not sure how much longer he's going to be with the team. I think I'd have to check his contract, but I can't imagine he's going to be with the team long term. So wouldn't it behoove the Giants? Look, you've invested in Dexter Lawrence for a number of years. Why not consider getting a stud to line up next to him? Because how many times in the last year or two have we seen the Giants get totally beaten in the trenches, particularly on defense? You get a stud defensive lineman. Maybe that helps fix the run defense, which has just not been very good. All right. So, you look at the draft, the mock drafts, and how things kind of lay out right now as of January 12th, when I'm recording this show, and you say, oh, the top 3 picks, hands down, have to be in some order: Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Travis Hunter. And maybe that will stay. That will be the case moving forward. But if you're building your team and you want to be competitive, how much, can it hurt to start working on the trenches? Now you could say, well, what if you get a defensive lineman in round 2? Well, yeah, you could, I suppose. If you do your homework, you can probably find a guy who could be, solid in any round. But if you have a chance to get a guy who can really make an impact, and I think a guy like Mason Graham can make an impact alongside of Dexter Lawrence, isn't that worth considering as a potential, 3rd overall draft pick? And folks, look, I know what some of you are probably saying as you watch this. You're like, get the quarterback. Well, if there's not a quarterback there to be gotten, don't you have to pivot and go to plan B? And, look, as I put together my offseason plan for the Giants, what I would do, I know this is going to be difficult to do. I don't think it'll be impossible. But if you're the Giants, maybe do you look for a cornerback that is a veteran guy? Because you've got a lot of youth in that cornerback room right now. So maybe get a veteran guy in here, a guy who can be your CB1. You're going to have to pay through the nose to get him. I get it. But wouldn't it be worth the investment if you can get a shutdown CB1 type? So if you're going to invest your money in free agency, your salary cap space, to me, it makes sense to maybe look at cornerback and quarterback. Get a veteran bridge in here. That's how I would spend the money. Just, in the early stages of putting together my plan to fix the Giants. Now, will the Giants agree? That I don't know. They're just now obviously starting the process. So we'll see how it evolves as we go forward. Because again, It's not just about the Giants. It's like, what are the other two teams in front of them going to do? Will Cleveland make a blockbuster trade, for example, for a quarterback, which now removes quarterback from their picture? Will Tennessee do something, where they don't need a quarterback after all? So there's a lot of unknowns at this point, but I'm just putting the trench idea out there as an alternative because I don't think it's been discussed that much. And I think it's something that, you can't rule out anything at this point when it comes to this Giant team. And, I'm curious to see if that's indeed the direction that they go in. All right, coming up next, the Giants divide. All right, the decision's in to keep Joe Shane and Brian Dable. And let's hope it works out. But, I have some concerns about it working out. And I'm going to tell you what those concerns are right after this. Hey, Giant fans, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but who might be open to the perfect role. 86% of the small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours when they use LinkedIn. And did you know that LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier? They have a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier than ever before. So go on and find out why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, Giant fans, it's playoff time. And if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football and you want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, simply pick more or less on the player stats, like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns, and you'll have a chance to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in as little as 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, Price Picks has you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. It's so easy to use. And like I said, the payouts are super fast. You can get your money in as little as 15 minutes when your picks hit. Plus, with the weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts, add even more value to your lineups. And here's a special offer right now for Locked On listeners. Download the app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And we are still 5 days a week, folks. The news doesn't slow down here in the Giants. And I know the Giants have had some radio silence since last Monday. I know we're all waiting to see what changes, if any, will be made on the coaching staff. And, for those of you who asked me, yes, I do think some changes are coming. I can't say for sure what those changes are going to be, but I do think there are changes that are coming. It's very rare that a coaching staff stays intact. Guys leave all the time, newcomers, new positions are created. So I do think something's going to happen. I know a lot of you have asked me about Shane Bowen and what the story is. And Mike Garafolo at the NFL Network believes that as of now, Bowen will be back, that Brian Dable will retain him. And that actually kind of leads into this next segment that I want to talk about. And that is the Giants divide. Now, by keeping Shane and Dable, I understand what John Mara was trying to get at, but here's where I would have concerns about those decisions. Before we even get started with the season, before we get started with any of the moves, maybe this is just me, folks, but I feel as though Shane and Dable are automatically on the hot seat now. That every move that they're going to make is going to be magnified. It's going to be really scrutinized. And I just feel like there's pressure for these two guys to really, get this program back on track. And that's because, John Mara basically said, I'm running out of patience. So just, how much patience is he going to have? Because look, I don't think the Giants are going to turn this team around in 1 year. Maybe they make them a little bit better and get them pointed in the right direction. But if you're looking for a Super Bowl contender, I don't see that happening in 1 year. All right. So here's where I would have concern with this whole thing. You're keeping Shane and Dable. They have 2 years left on their respective contracts. From the outside looking in, if you're trying to hire, let's say, an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator or any kind of coach, what kind of, struggle are you going to have with getting a top flight individual? If they view the Giants situation as, okay, yeah, Shane and Dable have 2 years left on their contract, but really, are they lame ducks? Okay. Is it a contingency type of deal where if they don't, get this team going in the right direction, is it going to be worth it for me to pick up and move and join the Giants franchise when there is a possibility that Shane and Dable beyond this year, if the team doesn't do well, they're out? That to me is a problem. Now, there's could always be somebody out there that says, you know what? I don't care. I want my chance. I feel I can make a difference. I feel I can boost my own personal stock if I want a head coaching job down the line. You could find that. But I don't know, folks. That's something that I'm concerned about. I'm not going to lie. And I know the decision's done. What's done is done. But I just feel like, that could potentially be an issue. And I don't want to say that that's going to keep Dable from making changes to his coaching staff. But, you just got to, I think you have to take that into consideration because it could be a very valid concern. And along with that, folks, is free agency. Now, how many times have we seen it? The team will sign a free agent, okay, who fits in with what the current staff does or wants to do. And then there's a change. And now is that free agent going to be a fit moving forward? Now, the easy answer is that a good coaching staff will figure out a way to use talent, regardless of whether the guy is press man coverage or better in zone or whatever the case may be. But isn't it making it a little harder on yourself when you have that type of situation? And that's why, I go back to what John Mara said and how I wish that if he was really, on board with the plan that Gable and Shane presented to him, that he had been a little bit more convincing and said, look, I believe in these guys. I think they can turn it around. I have no problem with what they told me. We're going to be better. And I just feel like, Mara's trepidation or reluctance to fully embrace it, whether it was intentional or not, I don't think that it helped. I could be wrong here. I hope I am, actually, because look, I'm tired of the Giants losing year after year. I know you guys are. And I've said many, many times that you guys deserve a better product. And, for all I know, maybe it'll work out. Maybe Brian, if he makes changes to the coaching staff, he reaches back into his past and he gets guys that he's worked with before. And maybe that's how he puts it together. That could be. But I'd be lying to you guys if I said I wasn't a little bit concerned about the potential direction of this franchise. Hopefully, I'm just worrying about nothing. But, I've seen this happen before, not just with the Giants, but I've seen it happen around the league. And I just wish that it was just, they were on more solid ground. And we'll see, the next several weeks and months will tell us a lot. Will the Giants be able to attract quality free agents? Now, some of you will say, hey, if the money's right, sure, the Giants will have no problem bringing in free agents. But for some guys, Yeah, it's about the money, but for some guys, it's also about being part of a stable organization. It's about having a chance to win a Super Bowl. And let's be honest here. Right now, the Giants need to get back on solid ground. The Giants are not anywhere near being ready to challenge for a Super Bowl. There's a lot of work to be done. And I'm not saying that they can't accomplish it, but there's a lot of work to be done. And, you throw in the other little X factors, like the high tax rate in the New York, New Jersey area, amongst other stuff. And I don't know. I just wonder if maybe there'll be, some more challenges that maybe they're not anticipating to that, they'll be able to overcome. But, again, we'll see because we don't know what Shane and Dable outlined for ownership, and maybe their plan works. I hope so. I really do, for all of our sakes. All right, coming up next, speaking of Shane and Dable, there's one dynamic in that working relationship, from what I can see, that I would really, really like to see change. I'm going to talk about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the very same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, Giant fans, if you're looking to join an exclusive community of Big Blue faithful where you can discuss the team and receive inside information in a toxic free environment, then you need to check out the Locked On Giants Blue Crew community. Members get access to our exclusive by invitation only Discord channel where we can talk one on one with one another, ask questions, get breaking news, and so much more. Plus, as part of the Locked On Giants Blue Crew, I text exclusive updates and info directly to your phone, and you can communicate back with me via text. So come on and see what it's all about with a free 14-day trial. And when you use our promo code Blue Crew, you will get your first 2 months after your 14-day trial ends at 50% off the regular price of $4.99 per month. If you don't like it, cancel before your free trial ends and you will owe absolutely nothing. For more information or to register, visit joinsubtext.com/lockedonnygiants. And again, that promo code is Blue Crew, BLUECREW. And be sure to enter the promo code at the top of this page to get your 2-month discount. Text and data rates may apply. Please see your carrier's plan for detail. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Now, coming up this week on Locked On Giants, I wanted at some point do a mock draft. I did one over for New York Giants on SI, so I think I want to do one for this show. I'll get hold of the simulator and I'll run that mock draft, and we'll see what I come up with. It's always interesting to see. I'm starting to get into the draft prospects, and I have some thoughts, but we'll see how a mock draft will work out. And then I think we haven't done this in a long time, and I think we probably should start doing it, especially now in the off season. But let's bring back our mailbag here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So if you have questions that you want to have answered on the program, just pop them into an email. You can send them to me. The address is in the show notes. It's Locked On NY Giants podcast at Gmail. You can also send me questions over at New York Giants on SI. I do the mailbag every week there. There's a form there that you can send your longer questions to. So let's pop them in there, and I'll do a show answering your questions, because I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there that, I'll try to answer for you. So, all right, let's talk about the biggest change that I think needs to happen with the Giants between the working dynamics of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Now, to understand what I'm about to say, we've got to go back to when the two were hired. and how the two have kind of run business together. The two came in, within a matter of, I think, a couple weeks of each other. First it was Shane, then Dable. And ever since then, they've really, been presented as a united front, pressers and all that stuff. And it was interesting because this last round of pressers that they had, they did them separately, supposedly because Shane was busy. Now, I understand why the Giants and why Shane and Dable would want to do that because, John Mara is basically saying that the GM and the head coach need to be hand in hand in agreement on decisions made by the franchise. But I think there also needs to be a little bit of a divide there, if you will, that I don't think is quite there, at least from what I have observed. And here's what I mean by that. I get the impression that Joe Shane and Brian Dable kind of see each other as their equal. And in reality, they're not. Joe Shane is the general manager. In terms of the pecking order, he is above the head coach. But, you look at some of the decisions, you look at, the communication, you look at, okay, do they agree with everything that the other guy does? And you almost get the impression that Joe doesn't quite, stand up and say, hey, Brian, look, I don't agree with what you're doing. And I'll give you an example. All right. Look at training camp. You've heard me speak about training camp and preseason and how Brian Dable believes that as long as they're getting quality reps, quote unquote, in these joint practices, why put the starters out there in preseason games? And you have heard me say many times that you cannot replicate preseason game action in practice. That practices, whether they're joint practices or the team going at it by itself, that it is a controlled environment, that there's no pass rush, there's no tackling, there's no, really no football, so to speak. So, using that as an example, let's say Joe Shane disagrees with that and he feels, that the Giants should play their starters in, a little bit more often in preseason, regardless if they have joint practices. Joe's got to be able to, in my opinion, stand up and say to Brian, hey, Brian, look, we've done it your way the last 2 years, and we've come out and we've looked flat in the first week of the season. How about we do it this way? And just really say, look, I disagree with what you're doing. I understand why you're doing it, but we need to do it this way. So, maybe be a little more assertive. And again, this is my observation. For all I know, inside the building, maybe Joe is a little bit more assertive. I don't know. I do know that the results haven't shown it. So that's why I say this. So Joe Shane, look, I know he's friends with Dable. I believe their families are friendly with each other. But you have to be able to separate the two and be able to say, look, I'm the GM. This is what I think we should do because your way's just not working. You can't necessarily leave it up to Brian to have an epiphany and say, oh gosh, this isn't working. Because, he may have it and he might not. You really want to take that chance and blow another, opportunity? So for me, folks, that would be one of the changes, probably the biggest change I'd like to see in the dynamics between Shane and Dable. And again, I'm not in the building now every day. It's the off season. For all I know, maybe they have, they have their disagreements. Maybe they, what happens, I don't know. But I do know this. The results haven't been there. And I get it. You don't want to micromanage somebody. I don't think Joe Shane should micromanage Brian Dable. But if you see something that just isn't working and it's not working and you feel strongly about it, say something and just say, look, this is how we're going to do it. This is how I want it done. So that's the growth I would like to see in the relationship between Dable and Shane, because I just don't think that it's there right now. I think they see each other as their equal. And if they do, if I'm right on that, that's got to change. Yeah, Brian, you manage the football team, you call the plays, you decide the coaches and the personnel and all that stuff. But certain bigger picture things has to change. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked on Giants. As always, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on tomorrow's show.